Europe is waking up to a new threat. Russia's shadow war has crossed into Polish territory, with sabotage on key railways supplying Ukraine. In a massive security move, Poland is deploying 10,000 troops to protect its infrastructure. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called the railway explosion an unprecedented act of sabotage, targeting not just tracks, but the very lifeline that delivers weapons and aid to Ukraine. Tonight, we break down how this bold move by Russia is reshaping Europe's security and why NATO, the EU, and the West must respond before it's too late. It all began with a warning in the skies over Poland. In September 2025, Polish authorities reported around 20 Russian drones crossing into their airspace. While no one was hurt, the incursion was alarming. Officials said many drones crashed or were intercepted, but the message was clear: Poland was being tested. Experts call these moves a classic form of hybrid warfare, probing defenses, gathering intelligence, and creating fear without triggering full-scale conflict. For Poland, this was more than a warning. The war in Ukraine was spilling into Europe, with attacks coming not just from missiles, but drones and covert operations. These incursions set the stage for an even more dangerous escalation: the explosion on a railway vital to Ukraine's supply chain. Polish security services now faced a harsh reality. Russia's new front was Europe itself, testing, intimidating, and destabilizing allied nations. The escalation became terrifyingly real on November 17, 2025, when an explosion tore through a section of the Warsaw-Lublin railway line, a critical artery connecting Poland's capital to the Ukrainian border. This was no accident. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called it an unprecedented act of sabotage, directly threatening national security and the safety of Polish citizens. The track isn't just steel and sleepers, it's a lifeline. Every day, 115 trains traverse this route, many carrying weapons, ammunition, and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Thankfully, there were no casualties, but the potential for disaster was enormous. Polish authorities quickly identified 2 Ukrainian nationals as the perpetrators, allegedly operating under Russian intelligence guidance, who then fled toward Belarus. Investigators also noted a second, highly probable sabotage incident further down the line, where railway traction was damaged, forcing a train to stop abruptly. Interior Minister Marcin Kierwiński emphasized, abundant evidence was collected at the site that should allow for the perpetrators to be quickly identified. Defense Minister Radoslaw Sikorski highlighted the military importance of the line, announcing that the army would inspect a 120-kilometer stretch of track leading to Ukraine, underscoring the priority of securing this supply route. Poland described the incident as state terrorism, an attack on the very infrastructure that sustains Ukraine and protects Europe's eastern flank. By targeting a railway, Russia or its proxies sent a stark signal. Even supply lines behind NATO borders are vulnerable. To understand the gravity of this sabotage, one must recognize the strategic importance of the Warsaw-Lublin-Ukraine route. This corridor is more than a train track. It is a lifeline for Ukraine's war effort and a vital artery for Europe's support. Each day, it carries weapons, air defense systems, ammunition, and humanitarian aid from Poland's industrial centers to the Ukrainian border. It also facilitates the movement of civilians, enabling safe passage for Ukrainians fleeing conflict zones. Prime Minister Tusk stressed its significance. This route is also used to transport weapons to Ukraine. Fortunately, no tragedy occurred, but the legal implications are very serious. For Russia or its proxies, striking this line serves a dual purpose: physical disruption and psychological intimidation. By targeting a key supply route, Moscow signals that even behind NATO borders, support for Ukraine is not safe from sabotage. In response, Poland has committed 10,000 troops to protect critical infrastructure, demonstrating how seriously Warsaw views the threat to this corridor. Defense Minister Sikorski reiterated that military inspections would cover a 120-kilometer stretch of track, highlighting the tactical priority of securing this vital lifeline. The Warsaw-Lublin Ukraine route is more than just steel rails. It is a symbol of Europe's commitment to Ukraine. Its security ensures not only the flow of supplies, but also the continuity of NATO support. Any disruption along this line strikes directly at the West's ability to sustain Ukraine's defense, making it a prime target in Russia's broader campaign of sabotage. The railway explosion in Poland was far from an isolated event. Across Europe, governments have been grappling with a growing wave of sabotage, arson, and cyberattacks, all linked to Russian intelligence operations. Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, officials have documented at least 25 arson or explosives plots across multiple countries, from Germany to Lithuania to the United Kingdom. Bart Sherman, professor of terrorism and political violence, describes this as part of Russia's shadow war. Even if the links to Russia are quite obvious or quite clear in some cases, there is never really a smoking gun, or very seldomly there is one. It is plausible deniability, which makes it a very powerful instrument of Russian foreign policy because it kind of shields them against retaliation. These operations often involve recruiting civilians via social media, including platforms like Telegram, to carry out acts of sabotage. The civilians may not even realize the full scale of the campaign, which allows Moscow to orchestrate attacks without deploying official intelligence personnel. In each case, the goal is consistent: intimidate European populations, disrupt logistics and supply chains to Ukraine, and erode public confidence in government's ability to protect critical infrastructure. Polish officials, including Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski, have been blunt about the stakes. The railway line attack was not only an act of sabotage, but also an act of state terrorism. Europe's struggle has been both to identify the perpetrators and to craft a coherent response, as attacks are designed to stay below the threshold that would trigger full military retaliation. The Warsaw-Lublin railway attack, therefore, is not an isolated act. It is part of a continent-wide pattern, signaling that Europe's infrastructure and civilian areas are increasingly in the crosshairs of Russia's hybrid war. While Europe braces against sabotage and hybrid threats, the United States continues to play a pivotal role in seeking a diplomatic resolution to the war in Ukraine. Washington must balance supporting Kyiv militarily with preventing escalation into NATO territory. The recent wave of attacks, including the Warsaw-Lublin railway explosion, underscores the challenge. Advanced weapons, intelligence, and aid flow to Ukraine, while strikes on European soil, drones, railways, cyber incursions, risk drawing NATO deeper into the conflict. Senior U.S. officials warn that Moscow's hybrid warfare tactics cannot be ignored, but also caution against overreaction that could trigger a broader confrontation. Experts note these attacks are meant to pressure the West and test whether allies will continue supporting Ukraine. Strategically, the U.S. must strengthen European defenses to prevent further sabotage, maintain military and economic aid to Ukraine, pursue diplomacy to end the war without direct conflict with Russia. In essence, the U.S. strategy is twofold: support Ukraine and protect Europe, navigating a minefield of covert operations and hybrid threats. The Warsaw-Lublin sabotage signals a sobering reality. The battlefield now stretches far beyond Ukraine, and ending the war will demand both diplomacy and resilient defense. The Warsaw-Lublin railway explosion triggered swift and decisive action from Poland and its NATO and EU partners. Recognizing that hybrid attacks are central to Russia's strategy, European and transatlantic institutions are recalibrating their defenses. Poland responded by deploying 10,000 troops to protect critical infrastructure, including railways, power stations, and communications networks. Defense Minister Radoslaw Sikorski stressed the military's role in securing border regions and preventing further attacks. Diplomatically, Warsaw acted firmly, closed Russia's last consulate in Gdansk, called on EU partners to restrict Russian diplomats' travel in the Schengen area, strengthened intelligence cooperation with Romania and other allies. At the EU level, officials like Kaja Kallas warned that Europe cannot normalize these threats. The EU is working to protect critical infrastructure and improve intelligence and law enforcement coordination, presenting a unified front against Russia's shadow operations, which include sabotage, cyber attacks, and psychological intimidation. Meanwhile, NATO is enhancing airspace monitoring across Eastern Europe. Following 20 drone incursions into Polish airspace, NATO launched Operation Eastern Sentry to increase aerial surveillance and intercept potential threats. However, experts caution that a major gap remains. Charlie Edwards, Senior Fellow for Strategy and National Security, warned, "There is not yet a single NATO-EU political framework that treats drones, rail sabotage, and other operations as one campaign with one shared playbook. This needs to happen urgently." Poland's response underscores a new reality. Sabotage is no longer a peripheral threat. It is central to Europe's security landscape. While Europe races against sabotage and hybrid threats, the United States continues to play a pivotal role in attempting to bring the war in Ukraine toward a diplomatic resolution. The United States has revealed all 28 points of its proposal to end the Russia-Ukraine war to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Washington faces a delicate balance, supporting Ukraine militarily, advancing negotiations outlined in the plan, and preventing escalation that could drag NATO countries directly into the conflict. The recent wave of sabotage, including the Warsaw-Lublin railway explosion, highlights the challenges for U.S. diplomacy. On one hand, America provides advanced weapons, intelligence, and economic support to Kyiv. On the other, attacks on European soil, whether drones, railways, or cyber incursions, threaten to drag NATO countries deeper into the conflict. Senior U.S. officials have repeatedly stressed that Moscow's hybrid warfare tactics cannot be ignored, yet they also caution against overreaction that could escalate into a broader confrontation. Experts note that attacks like Poland's railway sabotage are intended to pressure the West into hesitation, testing whether allies will continue their support for Ukraine. In essence, the U.S. strategy is twofold: support Ukraine and protect Europe, all while navigating a minefield of covert operations and hybrid threats. Each new incident, from drones in Polish skies to sabotage on vital railway lines, underscores how fragile the path to peace has become and how crucial America's role remains in coordinating both military and diplomatic responses. The Warsaw-Lublin incident sends a clear signal. Ending the war in Ukraine will require not only diplomacy, but a recognition that the conflict's battleground now extends far beyond Ukraine itself. The railway explosion in Poland is more than a local incident. It's a warning that Europe has become a new front line in Russia's shadow war. Drones, sabotage, and hybrid attacks are testing NATO, the EU, and Ukraine's allies like never before. As Poland fortifies its borders and the West coordinates defenses, one thing is clear: the war in Ukraine isn't just on the battlefield anymore. It's on European soil, and the stakes have never been higher. What happens next could redefine Europe's security for years to come.